Hello, this is Eric Howard with Loring Sternberg and Associates, and today I am with Scott Goldsmith of Ronal Blue Trust. Scott is a financial advisor for the Everyday Steward. Scott, welcome.
Thanks. Great to be with you today, Eric.
Hey, so glad that you were able to join us. And as we were talking before, this is a resource for those that are following us. I don't want anybody to construe this as counsel or as financial advice, but that this is perspective. This is an offering. Certainly as a senior financial advisor, you are seeing and positioned in a unique place. Obviously, COVID-19 has not occurred before. So you're walking into this with eyes wide open. There is no rule book. How are you seeing your clients respond to the needs of non-for-profits?
Yeah, honestly, a lot of my clients have been super encouraging to me personally during this time. As we manage portfolios for clients, they're obviously seeing the value of their portfolios go down. But I think what I've observed is that during times of crisis, people become more extreme versions of themselves. We always want to try to avoid the extremes of fear and greed and help our clients do that. But one of the things that has just really impressed me is the clients who are saying, now is the time. Now is the time for us to lean in and really support nonprofits who need us. And I got a really encouraging email from a client a couple of weeks ago who said, you know what, we've been planning for this charitable giving. When I hit 70 and a half, I'm going to be doing distributions from my IRA. And we've also been planning on some projects around the house. And to be honest, I'm not concerned about the tax deductibility of my giving, but when can we get that started? Do I have to wait until I'm exactly 70 and a half? He was asking some technical details. But then he said something that really struck me. And he said, you know what, quite frankly, we can put those projects around the house on hold. If we need to make some sacrifices right now, glad to do that. But we really want to lean into our giving. That's been something that's been important to us for a long time. And we really just want to make that a center point in our discussions right now. So that was an email precursor to a really, really fun conversation with that client. And the good news for them is because we had planned for some of those projects, both personally and charitable giving, they had money that was set aside ready to go. So the good news for that particular client is he didn't have to make the personal sacrifice in order to do the giving that he wanted to do. He got to do both and I've said in other conversations with clients who are saying, I recognize I may need to cut back at some level, and asking for, I trust, Scott, that you'll tell me when I need to do that. And another conversation with a client, and I said, yeah, your spending as well as your giving has increased over the last few years. So there's probably going to be a time whenever you're going to need to pull back. But I'm okay with that being a later time. It's okay if a few years down the road you need to pull back on some of your spending and giving because you're doing it now and you recognize a significant need now. So again, let's lean in to do some of that giving that has been so important. So I just seen clients lean into who they are, become more extreme versions of themselves. And I'm blessed to be able to work with some really, really generous people.
That's incredible. That's great to hear. So this one might be a little bit tougher question. Not only do you work with individuals all over the place and at all different levels, there's obviously non-for-profits that also engage you. You get to know them because those clients give to them. What are you hearing from non-for-profits as they start to navigate COVID-19 and the current landscape?
Yeah, I think I don't work directly with a lot of nonprofit leaders, but I have casual relationships both as a donor and as clients have engagement with nonprofits. So that's probably more anecdotal than anything. And I think they haven't seen the hit yet, depending on the kind of organization. And I've heard the phrase a generosity surge. that some nonprofits have actually received more here recently because people recognize the need. So I think one of the things that nonprofits are wrestling with, among other things, is there's some new provisions in the tax code, in the CARES Act, about charitable giving. Things like you can give up to 100% of your income, which isn't going to apply to a lot of people, or just other provisions. So I think what some nonprofits are wrestling with is, how do we get that information to our donors without being a tax advisor, without stepping over that line? Because quite frankly, a lot of nonprofit leaders, they know a little bit about the tax law, but the CARES Act was like 800-900 pages. So they can't digest all of that. So I think that just trying to balance, how do you serve donors as well as, but really do the thing that you do as a nonprofit, whatever that service or whatever that investment may be. So I think some of that is just trying to figure out, and trying to think, how do we think about the future? Is our revenue going to be down? How much is it going to be down? And how do we shift in the middle of that?
That is something, when I was always in the direct side of the non-for-profit world, being able to call up you or one of your associates or partners and saying, hey, I have a client, I know just enough advice to be dangerous, but I just always appreciated that about Ronal Blue Trust, that you're willing to talk to someone, not necessarily to get a client, but just to provide counsel.
Yeah.
With that non-for-profit. So there's a lot of things that are obviously spinning. What advice would you give to organizations that are concerned as they're looking at the stock market volatility, up, down, different days, sideways, and the impact on their ability to fundraise?
Yeah, so a couple things. One is, if fundraising is just about the ask, then you may need to rethink your fundraising strategy. If fundraising is just about bringing in the dollars, bringing in the assets, I'd encourage you to just take a step back and recognize that your donors aren't just fresh meat, but they're people. So from that standpoint, I would say lean into relationships. The relationships that you have, lean into them. And it doesn't take much to have a conversation that starts with, so how are you doing these days? And that question the question of how you doing used to get a good, how are you? And now that question gets a genuine answer. So I think that that's one piece of it, is so much of giving is relational. So lean into the relationship. And then on the stock market side, the stock market is down and there are less assets that are appreciated. There may still be assets that are appreciated that can be given from a tax deductibility standpoint, but I wouldn't focus on the individual stocks or funds that could be given, but think about a balance sheet as a whole. So the balance sheet is going to include cash. For people who are 70 and a half, they may be able to use some of their IRA assets for giving, even though this year the required minimum distribution has been waived. There may be assets in the IRA that haven't gone down in value as much, or haven't gone down in value at all. So there may be other assets, so they could distribute money from IRAs. And again, I think people can be creative when something is important to them, and think about what else there is other than what you have been receiving. And maybe it's somebody has a donor advised fund that they've had money sitting in. Now's a great time to make a distribution from a donor advised fund. So I think those are some, people like to see creativity. And I think as a fundraiser, it's not your job as much to help the client figure out where to get the money, but just to be in relationship with them so that when they're ready to make the gift, they know of you and they're ready and they want to serve you.
Absolutely. That's great insight and wisdom. what would you offer as insight to board members who are serving on non-for-profits at this time?
Yeah, just be in relationship with people. People are isolated, and getting on a quick Zoom call just to say, "Hey, how you doing? Is there a way that I can serve you? Is there anything on your minds that you just want to talk about? Can we grab a cup of virtual coffee and just chat?" Relationships are important, and I think the board members, two primary roles from my perspective of board members is donor development, the fundraising piece, and then also board members need to be leaning into the leaders of the organizations. The CEOs and the COOs and the development directors. It's a hard time. It's a hard time to be doing that work. So board members, lean into your people, care about your people, from the CEOs to the receptionist. It's a stressful time for everybody, and it doesn't take much to show that you care, if in fact you do. And if you don't care, then now is probably not the time to try to trick people into thinking that you do. But I think that just show that you care, and now's not the time to give people space. Now's the time to say, "Hey, how's it going?" And then shut up and listen to let people talk about how it's going.
Yeah, absolutely. What are your clients? So this is obviously this can be a very broad question, and you're representing a segment of individuals. What are your clients expecting in regards to communication from the non-for-profits they support, the organizations they support during this kind of COVID-19 epidemic?
Yeah, I think what they're not expecting is we're doing everything that we were already doing, and we're doing it normally, and we just need more money because inflows are down. That's not what anybody wants to hear. I think what people want to hear is, this is why we exist.